Evaluators of the Hawaii Community Foundation's Pillars of Peace Social-Emotional Learning Initiative. And this is an initiative that is funding 11 schools around the state to do SEL. And this is Jackie Ngazorio from the University of Hawaii. She's recently completed a residency at my company at Impact with our SEL evaluation team through a program sponsored by the Casey Foundation called the Leaders in Equitable Evaluation and Diversity. So she and I are going to be talking today about some things to consider when figuring out what kind of SEL program might be a good fit for your school. So we're going to review a little briefly some of the things that the literature tells us about how to select the program that's a good fit for your school. We'll tell you a little bit about our evaluation and some of the considerations that these schools used in selecting the programs that they are using, some lessons that we've been learning through the evaluation. We'd like to hear from you a little bit about your experience, and then we'll provide a few recommendations about how to go about choosing the right kind of program. So this is probably the most common definition of social-emotional learning that's being used out there. It comes from the Collaborative for Academic Social-Emotional Learning, or CASEL, who you've been hearing about here at the conference if you didn't know them before. Raise your hand if you have not seen this wheel before. Everybody's seen it before. Okay, so one thing I want to just mention is initially the CASEL wheel included the pieces of pie in the middle, and then they subsequently added those circles around the outside. So more of an acknowledgement that SEL is not only happening inside a classroom, but throughout our whole schools and in our homes and our communities. So I'm going to ask Jackie to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're learning from the literature about choosing SEL programs.
Okay, yeah. Hi, good afternoon. So primarily, this is some just resources from for finding the right program, Harvard, the Wallace Foundation, and the CASEL, and these are three of the resources that we'll be referring to today. And so right here is from the Wallace Foundation. They describe 6 characteristics for key features of effective SEL programs. And what we'll see in the following slides is some of the characteristics are very similar, but you have here incorporate safe elements, the occurring within supportive context, the building adult competencies, partnering with family and community, targeting behaviors and skills, and really setting reasonable goals. And as we'll see in the next couple of slides, very similar, but just phrased differently, correct? And this is from other resources within literature here. But you see there the classroom activities beyond the core lessons. You also see here family engagement, community engagement on the bottom as well. So just some key components that are echoed throughout. And our next slide is from the Harvard Foundation, and it's from Harvard. And right here you see very similar things as well. So connecting the skills from the academic content and related reading materials and projects. That's really about the active learning that we saw in the Wallace Foundation model. The supporting of community building initiatives, which is really, again, the partnering with family and community, including lessons going outside the classroom and how the CASEL Foundation had those on the outside rings of the circle as well. And so what you can see in the following bullets is that, again, it's really about not just the inside the classroom, but also what happens outside the classroom as well. And then for the developmental, for the developmental considerations here, it's really about how some skills that we talk about really lay the foundation for follow-up skills that might be used later in life. And so the example that we have there is how the executive function skills will be needed later for long-term planning, decision-making, coping skills, and that initial layering of it will allow them to create hooks that they need to really to make those decisions later. And then where some skills are very stage salient, that is what they need for that particular moment in time. Finally, for our cultural linguistics considerations that we saw as we've been doing this evaluation, is really how does the content of the SEL program really fit the cultural backgrounds of the students. And as we saw across the 11 schools, there's a wide variety of the cultural differences amongst the 11 schools. Also, how can the SEL program and school climate infrastructure be adapted to accommodate very diverse populations within schools? So very diverse populations going beyond the ethnic, but even if it's the socioeconomical status of the students, if it's the free reduced lunch status, if it's what military, not military. So those are things that we looked at when we were looking at these 11 schools as well. And then, is the program most situated for translation to languages of immigrant students? That's really important because we do have some schools that are in our evaluation that have a high population of, say, Japanese students, or Chinese students. So how can these programs be translated or into these languages as well? And then with that thinking in mind, you also have the how can materials be translated or reinterpreted into the Hawaiian language. And whenever we translate, there's never a clear translation from one language to the other. So if it's not translation, how can it be reinterpreted to take that cultural significance into what is meaningful for them? And then also when we think about how can the SEL best be integrated within Hawaiian culture and values, that also goes with the last bullet, for the DOE schools, how can this LSEL also fit in with the HA framework? And so the HA, are you familiar with the HA framework? So this is something that we've been thinking about is how does SEL align? How do they differ? And so this is something that we want to make sure is taken into consideration.
So these are lots of things to think about as you're thinking about different programs offer different aspects of this in terms of fit. And if you want a copy of the slides, just let us know. Happy to share the slides with you. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been learning from our evaluation. So the Pillars of Peace initiative was actually catalyzed by a visit from the Dalai Lama. And so this is the initiative of the Hawaii Community Foundation, and this is where the funding came from for these 11 schools. And we're looking at basically 5 different areas of measurement. How are the programs being implemented? What effect might the programs have on school climate, on student behavior, on SEL skills and competencies, and on academic success? And we're not going to talk about the evaluation any more than that, just to let you know that this is some work we're doing. What we want to talk about now is what are we learning from the grantees? So we're going to talk about considerations when selecting programs, key factors that affect implementation, challenges and solutions, the grantees' perceptions themselves about fit. So we'll run through those. So these 11 grantees all have different starting places. Don't you love these pictures? So their current school climate and what SEL activities they've been doing in the past and their relationship with their community and the faculty and staff attitudes towards their students, towards SEL. What needs are they trying to address? And all 11 of our schools have very different goals. Some are focused mostly on building empathy, some reducing aggression, teaching conflict resolution. So a lot of different goals. I like this particular quote. For one school, the goal is to change students' worldview from I don't know I'm going to get a hug or be noticed or eat food to I'm held, supported, and nourished. So it goes everything from something very specific, we particularly want to teach mindfulness, to something much broader than that. So the schools really varied a lot in terms of what they're after. And so of course they all chose different programs. And just to show you a little bit about the variation, this is just one of our measures, the number of behavioral incidents per 100 students. So across our schools, they range from 1.5, I think that is, all the way up to 120-something behavioral incidents per 100 students. So this is how varied these schools are. So obviously they're not all going to be using the same program. So how did they originally choose their programs? Well, for example, the school that chose tribes talked about how the positive interactions that happen in tribes fit well within the school's goals of developing a strong sense of belonging and building collaboration. Another school talked about how philosophy for children in action in a school with high academic achievement was really compatible with their award program for positive behaviors. Restorative practice seemed like a good fit with a response to intervention program in that school and show promise for shifting the focus to prevention and community building away from traditional disciplinary approaches. The No Bully program builds on empathy and peer building, and that's something that was already going on in the school they felt that they could build on. The school that's using Getting Along Together chose it partly because it was designed for the entire school, and also because it built on another program that they were doing, Success for All. So those were some of their considerations. Here's a few more. Second step in School Connect include a progression of skills through the grades. So some schools really wanted, some of our schools are K-12, and so they really wanted to have something that would run in common all the way through. And a lot, we're also looking for family support or family engagement component as well. Second step is shown in the research to be particularly effective for middle school. So there was one middle school that chose it for that reason. So a lot of different reasons. How comprehensive it is, how well it fits with what's already going on in the school. All right, so we did some analysis in the last couple of years of what does it take to effectively implement an SEL program. And it occurred to us that the answer to that question also is some considerations, because if you don't have what it takes, then can you get what it takes to be able to do this effectively? So the first one, time, we all know, oh, it takes time. But we actually learned quite a bit more about it than that. There's prep time. Now, by prep time, we don't just mean the prep time that a teacher has to take, but the time to actually prepare the school, the time to prepare for implementing effectively. And schools that dove right in and didn't have or weren't willing to take the time to think through their implementation had some implementation struggles. Team building, really, really important. Obviously, professional development time. Coordination time. Okay, so now we all know how to do this and we're all doing this, but if we don't all continue to coordinate with one another, we're going to lose our thread. Dedicated time at staff meetings, because if you don't revisit as a school how things are going, then again, people will end up moving in different directions. The No Bully program, for example, requires that students be released from a class for 15-minute solution teams. Teachers have to be willing to let their kids go for 15 minutes. So their time shows up in a lot of different ways. The need for a champion. Why do we need a champion? What does a champion bring? Passion, belief, enthusiasm, initiative, determination, energy, focus, attentiveness, and that that consistency, that continuing to move it forward and keep the focus on it over time. When the next initiative and the next issue come along, that there's somebody really continuing to champion the program. Teamwork. It turns out it's not only about, wow, if we collaborate or we work together, this is easier. But teachers talked a lot about the kind of camaraderie that comes out of we're facing this challenge together and how important that was to them. Somebody in the school that's going to be an SEL coordinator. Some schools it's a counselor, some it's a teacher, sometimes it's an administrator, but somebody needs to be designated because there's lots to learn. Somebody needs to be an expert. Keep the communication going. There's the program second step comes complete with a full classroom curriculum, but those materials have to get copied before each class session. Just having the SEL coordinator make the copies makes that so much easier for the teacher. Sometimes the SEL coordinator actually teaches a curriculum or provides professional development. And hopefully the SEL coordinator is the champion that kind of keeps the sustained focus and enthusiasm. And somebody to keep their eye on that data and really look at it and use it and delve into it and understand it and how the data, the evaluation work can actually help inform the program. We use the term commitment here. Most people talked about buy-in, and then somebody pointed out to us they don't like that language because it says you sell, I buy. And what commitment means is it's a free choice. You're committing because you really believe in this and you really want to do it. And that's where you want to reach, is where people have a real commitment. And it's not just, oh, the teachers have to be committed. You got to get student commitment as well, and you got to get all of the adults in the school and the community involved. There's got to be professional development, and some of the SEL programs come with professional development already there for you, all set up and ready to go. Some of the programs don't require a lot of professional development, but offer it. And some, you've got to go through some pretty rigorous professional development before you begin to implement their program. So understanding what the professional development requirements are, but also what the desired professional development might be to really do this well. And it comes in so many different shapes and sizes. We have some schools that actually take an entire professional development day with the entire staff, so that every single person in that school who has any interaction with the students, whether they be the librarian or the janitor, is involved in that training. And that's a huge commitment on the school's part, to basically shut down school for a whole day to do that. And other schools weave it into 5-minute increments in their faculty meetings. There's so many different ways to do it. There's got to be support from all these different kind of levels. I mean, if you have an administration that says, go you forth and do this, we really want you to do this, but then when the teachers turn and ask for support, it's not there, that's a huge challenge. So the support everybody talks about is how important that is. Pacing. So many of our schools are telling us, you know what? We decided we really needed to slow down and implement more slowly. And this can be done so many different ways. You can phase in different program components or different grade levels, phase in the adults first, make sure they have these skills and competencies first and can model them for their students. Phase in the families and community over time. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But the pacing everybody thought was really important. Don't just assume that you have to do it all on day one. Don't forget about the adults. We're not fixing broken kids here. We're trying to create a world in which our relationships are improved, and the adults need to learn those skills too. We found that some of the curriculum or the programs include time for reflection as part of the design of the program. And the students reflect, the teachers reflect, but we've also been asking for reflections from the schools when we're collecting our data. And a lot of them have talked about how that taking the time to do reflection has been tremendously valuable for them, even if it wasn't part of the program to do it. They did it because we asked them to. And then, of course, the flexibility to actually use what you learn from that reflection process and be able to adapt. All right, so those are 9 things that they all said, wow, these really affect how well we implement. So those were all things to think about. So then we asked them explicitly about fit. Tell us about fit. And they would tell us, oh, we like this program because it's a good fit for our more quiet students. It's a good fit for project-based learning. Restorative practices were seen to be a good fit with Hawaiian culture. Choose Love was seen to be a really good fit with the Hawaiian value of aloha. Or a good fit with the students' current reading levels. This is really important. Somebody else somewhere invented a curriculum, and you want to make sure that your students are going to be able to access it. Somebody suggested that the rough and tumble rural students seem to be less in touch with their feelings than more urban students. And so for those communities where, these are the kids that you're working with, having a program that really seems to address that has been helpful. The no bully work that's been helpful for building an inclusive school culture. Many programs address respect for diversity. Some of the programs are very flexible, leaving a lot of room for to incorporate other SEL tools. I think you were supposed to be doing these. Go ahead.
And then when we think about poor fit, correct, it's almost what we looked at as well, correct? So professional development, when some schools may take a day, or if all professional development are, say, on Oahu, the neighbor island schools may have difficulty obtaining what they need to achieve all teachers to be on the same page with regarding to the SEL program that was selected. Also, some programs work better for some grade levels than others. And so some schools we saw, they targeted certain grades with one program and maybe other grades with another program because of that fit for this particular program as well. The large class size can be a challenge for some programs, and this could also be regards to the teacher as well, being able to control that class and being able to implement that program successfully for that large size of the students. And then the families may resist some concepts. So in the case of mindfulness, which is very popular amongst many schools, that may be seen as more of a Buddhist practice. So if there isn't that communication clearly between the school and the family, that whole partnering between family and community, there may be that the resistance. Students in videos don't look like them or talk like them. Very important in Hawaii, correct? What do our students look like at all grade levels? What do our students look like compared to what's being seen? If these are all created on the continent, then how can they relate to those students? I'm at the university and we have that same issue as well. And then insufficient focus on prevention, correct? This is all how things are already happening. So how can we prevent things from happening, correct? So let's focus on that instead. And direct, as I mentioned earlier about the translation. So the direct translation isn't practical. So what can be done to maybe not interpret or translate, but to actually create a tool that's more relevant in that sense? So then, this is how are Hawaii schools adapting for that best fit, correct? So we talked about what was good, what was poor. So now how are they adapting for this best fit? And so to solve the professional development, it's, okay, what can be done remotely, correct? Where they don't need to like send all their faculty to Oahu or to the mainland for that. Piecing together the multiple SEL programs in the different grade levels, as I mentioned. And for some of these SEL programs, it's not like a one and all, correct? So what can you look at from this program and that program to really fit your school the best? And then breaking down the larger classes as well. And that's also a resource thing too, correct? If they have enough teachers to do so. Dropping the use of the term mindfulness, what is more, what can you look at for that as well? And then teachers reframing some of the lessons or activities or looking for other supplemental materials. So that really looks at really having the teachers understand the SEL program well so that they're able then to adapt it and to reframe it for their students that they're teaching. And then finally, some schools add trauma-informed strategies to increase the prevention. But again, it's looking at how informed are the teachers as well, and the administration on the SEL programs so that they're able to do that. And then the last one, we're having Hawaiian language immersion school teachers reinterpret, correct? As we mentioned, this is really important about developing new materials. And that's really what this may be, is developing new materials for schools, for your school, versus getting a material, getting one from the mainland maybe, but it's really being able to find the right fit that you can develop and to blend with others. Okay, so that was what we had for now. And so we want to get your feedback about if you're currently doing an SEL program in your school, what considerations would you add? What questions or concerns do you have about choosing the right SEL program? Do all of you have, or do you have SEL programs in your schools currently?
Raise your hand if you're already doing SEL in your school. Okay. Raise your hand if you're in a process of trying to think about whether to or what to do in SEL in your school. Great. So what do you think needs to be taken into account to make sure you've got a good fit? Are there things that are concerning you about, wow, I don't know if this will work for us because? What are some things that you think you need to think about?
Or for those who currently have an SEL program, what have you seen as maybe a strength of what you're experiencing and maybe a struggle that you can maybe share with others?
I think something that wasn't really thought about was what you talked about, the pace of it.
Pace?
So we just changed our schedule a bit, gave more time to that time in the morning, 4 days a week. And
What program are you using?
we wrote our own program,
Uh-huh.
and we paid our teachers to write different pillars. So mindfulness is one.
Okay.
Might be a good idea to change the name now that I'm hearing what you're saying, because you're right, there was some pushback on the whole, my kid doesn't do yoga, my kid doesn't.
Uh-huh.
You know, we've done quite a few of the things that you say, but there are some things that we did that are pitfalls, and I can see that you've already identified.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Others who have a current SEL program? Yes.
So I think, well, my school has been a tribe school for a really long time. Actually, I think it's gone complex. Why? Our entire complex is doing tribes. But I think the problem that we're seeing, one of the biggest problems we're seeing is that when new teachers come on board, you know, we have tribes training, but I feel like over the years it's kind of been watered down a bit.
Mhm.
And there's not as much, as you say, commitment or, buy-in, quote unquote, buy-in to the program. And so I don't think it's as strong as it could be at our school. And I just, maybe there might be consideration as maybe that's not the right fit anymore for us, or maybe we need to look at something else.
I think you brought up a really good point, which is when you choose a program initially, first of all, the landscape looks one way and the options available to you are readily available or affordable or whatever. That's one picture. And then down the road, do we ever go back and re-examine and say, has the landscape changed? Either in our school, because we've been already doing this for a while, or in the world at large in terms of what's available. And one of the things that we've been noticing is that what seems to be a pretty good fit to start with, because you see some result, stops feeling as good a fit when you've reached some kind of saturation level. And now schools are beginning to recognize after a couple years, actually there are some kids who are not reaching through this approach. And maybe for those kids we need something a little more. And there's probably no single SEL program out there that's going to meet the needs of the entire school, all of its adults and all of its students. And so it's not a good fit. It just might be that it's not enough. But I'm interested that professional development, so you say we have some, who provides it?
Well, we've had teachers and administrators through the years that became tribes trainers.
Okay.
Those are through, their own tribes training,
Mhm.
training of trainers, right? So they provide the training to new teachers and any other interested teachers that want to, just have a refresher.
Do you have the sense that the tribe's trainers are losing any passion or enthusiasm over time?
Could be, yes, that might be part of
Just
it.
a
I
thought.
also maybe feel like, it hasn't evolved, I guess, let me just put it that way. I feel like maybe some of the training hasn't really evolved over the years as our students have. So, stick by the book, stick by with whatever the book says, and it may not work anymore, it may not fit necessarily. So the way that the trainers train is by the book. So, I feel like that may have had,
Interesting. Anybody else have an experience from your school about SEL and any issues around fit or examples of good fit? Yeah.
Not necessarily an experience, but I'm wondering if your study went into perhaps which SEL programs might be a better fit for schools that have a strong history of character education or PBIS. It's kind of going into that evolution where for a while it was PBIS, which was strong on character education, but not so much the social emotional learning aspects. So we have schools who have a strong history of PBIS work or character education work, and then now we're trying to bring in SEL. But we don't want it to be clashing.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. No, we don't have any, we haven't looked at that directly, but what we are noticing is that, as I said, even schools that are finding whatever it is they're currently doing to be fairly effective are discovering over time that they need to add to it. So for example, one of the grantees under Hawaii Community Foundation is Waikiki Elementary, and that's a school that has like a 10 or 12-year history of doing SEL prior to this grant. So they already were a model school, and yet they applied for a grant to do SEL. It's like, why are they applying? Look, they already have it. We send other schools to see what they do because they already have it. And their answer was, we found that there were some students for whom this was not enough, that we needed to do more. So they went for funding to go in and really work with the students who really needed it. So if you're saying a school that has already a history of character education and PBIS, my question would be, what is it that they need? What is it that that work has not done for those kids or for that school? What's still missing? Because in essence, character education is SEL. It was sort of what we called it before SEL. Wasn't defined the same way, perhaps not as broadly, but certainly character education addresses a lot of what SEL is trying to accomplish. So what didn't it address? And so I think a really important part of getting started is to really do, and assess what's going on in our school that we still need to address. And that will allow you to target the SEL programming that best fits whatever that need is. But I think it's a really interesting question because we have, in our sample, there are a couple of schools that were doing character education before doing SEL. I don't know that any of them would have characterized themselves as being really strong in that area. But I think can you articulate at all what it is that's missing from the character ed that you say, well, but we still need SEL?
The character education programs have been based on promoting and developing a set of core ethical values for students: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, that type of thing. And not so much the social-emotional competencies that are promoted by CASEL. The self-awareness, the
Okay, I see what you mean.
self-regulation.
Yeah.
So it's very
Gotcha.
much overlapping.
Yeah.
But it's part of a separate entity. So now we're trying to blend character education with SEL together without making it seem like, oh, this is something different, something new. something
Right.
separate.
It's an expansion of what you've already been
And some
doing,
SEL
and
programs kind of blend
right.
core ethical values and social
Exactly.
competencies. So we're trying to look forward.
And you almost, I mean, you really can't do SEL without it at least venturing into the values, because respecting one another and being part of the community and all of that really are part of SEL. But the CASEL resource that they do have a great resource that helps you go through a selection process if you identify the areas that you want to focus on. So that's something to do, is to look at their website. Other people have questions about or concerns about how but our school's different. This is what we hear every school. Ours is different, so that's not going to. We're not sure that's going to work for us. Okay, so what's different about your school? What is it that is out there for you that you're trying to consider? I don't know what would be a good fit. Anybody else? Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that we've been at Tribe School also for a very long time. We just redid the entire K through 12 staff, and we did our
The-
4 days
the-
of training
uh-huh.
last year. And so instead of trying to find something that fit our school, the administration, which I'm part of, paid our teachers over the summer to take certain pillars of our SEL. And I'm talking about secondary, when I'm talking 6 through 12. The elementary side already had a pretty strong SEL program, which included the tribes.
So you found that tribes fit sufficiently well that it was worth building on that and adapting it to your school. So when you were saying earlier, well, we've paid our faculty to develop this curriculum, they're building it on tribes. I see.
The tribe is meant to be more into your
It's not supposed to be standalone.
Right. Yeah.
But so it was the thing about time and being able to give the teachers the time to develop it. They definitely have the knowledge of the students and the climate of our school, so the experts are sitting in our buildings already. So
Yeah.
we just offered this to them as a stipend over the summer for them to develop something, and that's where we rolled it out this year.
And how's it going so far?
It's been a little rough.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because people don't like change, or?
Well, we had study hall in the morning, so students who are in the older grades are like, well, what happened to my study hall? And so it's just a mind shift.
But you were doing tribes already.
We're already doing tribes, but that's in any class at any time. We're talking about our homeroom period in the morning.
Oh, you've now dedicated it, and so it's introducing new curriculum. Yeah, gotcha. I see.
Curriculum, 6 to 12 grade.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Anybody else have anything to share or questions? I mean, we ran through a lot of different things to think about. There's a lot of things to think about. And most of these are covered in the CASEL guide, but not all. And like I said, you're welcome to a copy of the slides. But just, we don't have answers. We can't tell you which is the right fit, but these are just, things to think about. Anybody else have any? Okay, well then let's go. I'm just going to kind of to wrap up a little bit here. So there are sort of 3 basic overarching principles from CASEL about getting the right fit. Engage diverse stakeholders in this selection process. You have no idea how important we keep seeing this is. We hear lots of stories about, oh, well, you know, the complex is doing it, so we have to do it. The principal said we have to do it, so we have to do it. Well, you know, these teachers love it and they do it, but these teachers over here won't do it. And that's really messing us up because now some kids are getting it and some aren't. Everybody in our school does it except this one teacher, and then those kids are at a disadvantage the following year. We hear all these stories, right? So really engaging diverse stakeholders in the selection process. Okay. Implementing evidence-based programs in the context of systemic district and school programming. So while some programs include standalone curriculum, to be effective, really SEL is a whole school effort. So you can start with, you know, standalone curriculum in a classroom or some classrooms, but eventually the whole school gets engaged. And that means really taking a hard look at how does SEL and positive discipline and trauma-informed strategies and teaching methods, how can those all be integrated in your school? And then considering these local contextual factors. To understand the community, the families that the students come from, the capacity of the faculty and the staff, what other goals and initiatives might be going on in your school that might compete for time and energy and attention, really understanding that concept. So that's what CASEL recommends as their 3 basic principles. So here's our little list also, you know, so which programming do you think would best address your intended goals and needs? How well is it, what aligns with the school's mission? What meets the specific needs of your students? Fits within your schedule or programmatic structure? Integrates into existing school climate and culture? Complements other programs or other goals outside of SEL? And some of these programs also bridge out of school time. And this can be really valuable. That's a great opportunity to be doing SEL. And some of these programs actually have out of school time additional curriculum that you can add to the daytime curriculum. So that can be really valuable. So what a lot of stuff. So here's what we recommend as a place to start. You start by identifying what your school's needs are. And there are a lot of different ways of doing that. You can ask teachers what they see as significant barriers to their students' learning. You can look at your data on student achievement and student behavior, the stuff you already have, and see what you can learn from that. You can look at school climate and which aspects of school climate are students rating higher or lower, or teachers or parents rating higher or lower. And of course you can do an assessment of students' SEL skills. There's lots of different assessments out there. And while we're not at all quite sure at this point how effective those are as measures of outcome or evaluation, as formative measures they can be tremendously valuable in helping steer you towards what needs to address. Use reviews and ratings. So go through what's out there. Go through the CASEL website and other resources that are out there. And we have those in the beginning of the slides, and we'd be happy to send those to you. And look at the ratings. Look at what people have to say about them and read the reviews. So pick some candidates. Then once you've got a few candidates, read as much as you can about them. Consider which skills are addressed. The modality of delivery, is this classroom instruction? Is this something that happens on the playground? Is this what goes on in the counselor's office? What's the modality? What their features are, grade level appropriateness, flexibility, adaptability, parent involvement, professional development, all those good things. And then once you've gone through those candidates and now you've narrowed it down a little bit further, check out the developers' websites and research articles and user groups and so on. Learn more about the ones that you're most interested in. Don't forget to look at the cultural sensitivity and linguistic responsiveness of the program. Get some sample materials, talk about it with the teachers, and then contact and visit schools that are already doing it. This is so meaningful. You can read everything you know, all that's written about a program, but if you can go and actually see it in action, you'll have a much better sense of what it looks like. So those are our basic sort of recommendations as to how to start. And that's basically what we have for you. This is how you can reach me. Does anybody have any other comments, or now that you know we have some time left? Yeah.
I'd like to just comment that Roots of Empathy is not evaluated by CASEL because it's not an all-school program, but it's a great thing you can add to any program or start before you make your choice. Because it occurs in one classroom or sometimes a grade band. And so with one enthusiastic teacher, you can begin to have a pilot of what a classroom looks like when they are looking at SEL goals. So I'm the program manager for this past year here. We're in 15 schools. We got it. And I'm happy to talk.
What is it called again?
Roots of it.
Yeah.
2 years old. 12 countries. Year and a half school. It has longitudinal research that shows just 1 year there's very specific positive results years later.
I think it's a really good point. We were talking about the pacing and not doing it all at once. Some programs lend themselves well to starting small and letting the other teachers, ooh, that's cool, I want to do that. And some are not as well suited to that. For example, the program Ruler really is school-wide, and you really do have to get all of the teachers and all of the adults on board. And you actually, it seems to work well to do that first, even before you introduce it to the students. Whereas Roots of Empathy is a good example. Another example of a program that you can kind of start in one classroom and grow it from there is the Philosophy for Children. There are certain programs like that. So I think that's important. Another consideration that actually we didn't really talk about much, but some of these programs really work well alongside other programs. So there was a panel earlier that had the Roots of Empathy and Choose Love and Ruler and Sanford Harmony, and everybody on the panel said about their program, they all said, and it works really well with other programs. So doing this doesn't stop you from doing that. Whereas I think in some cases, they don't necessarily dovetail as well together if they use different language. And so much about this is language. This is about having a common way of talking about how you feel, how they feel, how we get along, how we relate, how we make decisions, how we resolve conflict, and having a common language. So you don't want lots of conflicting language. But some of these programs are very well suited to being coupled and partnered with other programs in the same school. So that's another consideration. Anybody else have any other thoughts or comments about getting the right fit? Fears, worries? Okay, well, I think that's it then. If you're interested in a copy of the slides, just let me know. Be happy to send them. Thanks so much.